The United States has finally responded to the country of Iran. Now, of course, I'm talking about the one-way drone strike that managed to cause 3 US soldiers to lose their lives and many, many others to get severely injured. Now, the entire world, to include the country of Iran, is expecting some sort of major military retaliation. Nobody knows what is going to happen or what the US military is going to do, but I'm gonna go ahead and get straight into what the response is and what direction the US military looks like they're going to take in the Middle East. And I got some news for you. It's a little conflicting, a little vague, and almost a little hypocritical to how the United States is responding to the country of Iran. And you'll see what I mean as I start to provide you all of the evidence. Now, real quick, you know I don't have any sponsors on this channel, so at least turn on your notifications, like the video, or comment on the video. It helps you out a lot to get the information you need, and it also helps out the channel a ton, so thank you so much. Now, let's go ahead and get straight to the responses of what the United States is saying about the situation with Iran and how the United States might respond.
We do not seek another war. We do not seek to escalate. But we will absolutely do what is required to protect ourselves, to continue that mission, and to respond appropriately to these attacks.
The President and I will not tolerate attack on U.S. forces, and we will take all necessary actions to defend the U.S. and our troops.
So, as you can see, the United States' response is a little odd, where you have the United States saying, we don't want a regional war, especially with the country of Iran, and Iran also doesn't want a war. But you can also see this tonality of there will be a response and there will be some sort of retaliation at the time we deem necessary. Now, for some reason, as I scour the internet for some evidence or data to see what direction the United States might take with the response in the Middle East, the narrative right now is the US military is preparing for a strike immediately, something's going to happen very fast. And of course the news loves to sensationalize what is happening in the Middle East. Now, I must admit, this situation is extremely, extremely bad, and it puts the United States in almost a worst case scenario where there has to be a response. But the question is, when is the response going to happen? Historically speaking, in the context of ever since October 7th, this United States military has been extremely, extremely patient, with attacks happening widespread throughout the region, all the way from the Houthis in Yemen, up in Iraq with the Islamic resistance of Iraq, and over in Syria. And the reason why I use October 7th as a reference point is because you can see how the United States started to respond to the influx of attacks happening on US military members. And I promise we will get into today's context of what happened in Jordan and some speculation of why the attack was successful, but I need to show you this first. Now, on October 22nd, we had a news report where the United States was going to start to respond to the influx of attacks on US military members. And again, I am providing evidence to you to show how the US military has been extremely passive in their military strategy within the Middle East. Essentially, this report showed us that the personnel heading to the Middle East, or the deployments happening for the Middle East, was going to be Patriot missile soldiers and other soldiers in the expertise of missile defense or aerial defense. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is the United States in no way, shape, or form was going to retaliate in an offensive manner where the US military was going to take out militant groups themselves. We already saw that the United States was willing to take an influx of attacks and prepare for it down the road. Now, it took about 70 to almost 100 attacks later to where the United States in the countries of Iraq and Syria decided to actually retaliate and strike Iranian-backed personnel. Now again, I promise this will all tie in together. The evidence I'm trying to show you is the United States took their time, they identified who did these attacks, and when the United States retaliated, this retaliation almost meant nothing. If anything, the United States managed to stir up the hornet's nest, and actually the militants or Iranian-backed militias actually started to attack the US military in a more aggressive manner. And fast forward all the way to the Jordan attacks, you finally have one attack that was successful where US soldiers actually lost their lives. We can debate all day what a successful operation is from the Iranian-backed militia standpoint, but the ultimate goal is always try to eliminate US soldiers if you can, and they did. Now, the United States and US military is still trying to fully figure out what exactly happened on the ground in Jordan. I want to be highly respectful to the soldiers who are out there risking their lives day in and day out. And I want to be very careful when reporting the story because they only know what exactly happened. But there is a report out there, even being reported by Reuters and other major news outlets, that apparently there was a US drone or a friendly drone coming into the base to land after an operation. But at the same time, there was an Iranian-backed one-way drone. And apparently the US soldiers got them confused on the radar, or there was some sort of miscommunication. And that's how the drone was able to breach through the wire and hit its target. Now again, this is confirmed, unconfirmed. We need to be highly respectful of the families and the soldiers on the ground, but I did want to point out this narrative that is floating out there, and it is being reported by major news agencies, so I figured you should know this. Now, as far as the US responses and how Iran doesn't want war, we don't want war with them, this is a little conflicting because even towards the beginning of October 7th, where the United States started to stand up for Israel and really show that the United States wants to back Israel and be their partner in the Middle East, the United States was very willing to take a different stance and call out the country of Iran, even on the UN level. This was reported back on October 21st, where the United States was trying to push some sort of legislation or some sort of bill through the UN, the Security Council, to essentially condemn the country of Iran from providing arms to Hamas and other militant groups within the region. And of course, the word region is very vague, but the United States is talking about all Iranian-backed militias, from Iraq, from Lebanon, down to Yemen, throughout the entirety of the region. The reason why I'm showing you this is because it's almost a little comical how the United States is saying, well, the country of Iran, they don't want a war, and we don't want a war either, but only just a few months ago, the United States was willing, in the public eye, on the main global stage, to directly call out the country of Iran for providing all of this equipment to militant groups. Now, to give a little bit of the benefit of doubt, the United States was not receiving an influx of attacks at this time. This bill was more in the context to protect Israel and to go after Hamas. I don't think the United States or other world leaders had the foreknowledge to know that Iran was going to find an Achilles heel in the Middle East, and this also will tie everything together, where Iran realized that as long as they deny everything and just keep equipping the Houthis, the Islamic resistance in Iraq, or militants in Syria, no one can go after Iran, just go after those militant groups. And look, the country of Iran and their professional military, this is how they have set up their professional organization as a country and military, where you have the professional military of Iran, but they also branch off into their own versions of special forces to train these militant groups. And look, to show you where the United States is going to have a big problem and what their response is going to be, the United States and the British waited about 2 months until they performed their own versions of shock and awe, taking out over 60 targets in a few hours over all of Yemen, with some follow-up operations a day later. And now, during, even to this day, we have a couple of strikes here and there over the country of Yemen, but the Houthis are still alive and kicking, and they're still trying to strike other vessels in the Red Sea. So even with this massive shock and awe tactic and being backed with other allied nations, the United States has not really managed to create that much of a dent or that much of a cause and effect to stop the Houthis down in Yemen. And this is all relevant to what's happening up in Jordan because the Houthis are just the same as the Islamic resistance in Iraq and other militant groups backed by Iran. The country of Iran is the head of the snake. They are the head of the octopus. They are controlling everything that's happening in the Middle East. And again, they found the Achilles heel of the United States, utilize these militant groups, and deny anything that happened. So at the time of making this video, the United States essentially has put this out there. They don't know exactly what happened in Jordan. We are being told that it was Iranian-backed militant groups, but we are also being told that we don't want to go to war with Iran. And please don't take this as me being a warmonger or me wanting war with Iran. I'm just trying to point out how geopolitics can be a little hypocritical and things can change very quick. Because again, when you look at what the tone was for the United States military when they came to back Israel, they were very, very adamant and attacking anyone they deemed necessary, to include the country of Iran, if the country of Iran overstepped their boundaries and went after Israel directly. This is why there was a massive response from the US Navy, who was doing a very good job in the Middle East, where you had all of these ships and carrier groups show up. Those ships are there to deter Iran away from Israel. In fact, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower seems to be under the spotlight, like something is going to happen, even all over their social medias and all over Twitter or X, where the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower seems to be where the main focus of the attack is going to happen. But again, we do not have evidence that anything is going to happen. All we are being told is that the United States is going to retaliate, and they're going to do what they deem necessary to go after these Iranian-backed militant groups. Now, for those of you asking why wouldn't the United States go after the country of Iran, understand this: just because these are Iranian-backed militant groups, the United States knows that if they go after the country of Iran, the entire Middle East is going to go up in flames. And look, this is not me being like super crazy and like hyping this up. Even the State Department, Antony Blinken, recently put out a statement saying this is the worst the Middle East has been in a long time. And he knows this is because Iran has a lot of momentum going their way, and the country of Iran has a lot of influence and positive influence with their militant groups to perform successful operations with almost no retaliation. Essentially, to simplify this, Iran has even been able to go after the country of Pakistan themselves, the country of Iraq and Syria themselves, and essentially say, sorry, we didn't mean to piss you off. We are your friends, and we share a common enemy. And it's a really big deal if the country of Pakistan and Iraq just goes ahead and forgives Iran for what they did. I mean, you even have the country of Iraq talking about kicking out the United States military, and the Pentagon has still not acknowledged this. So not a lot is going in the favor of the United States military right now in the Middle East. But one thing is for sure, without a doubt, I do think we are going to see a big response from the United States. I personally do not want to see an attack on Iranian soil. I think this would ultimately lead to something very, very bad. I don't want to say a regional war, but it will definitely create something that all militant groups will band together, go after UN buildings, go after civilian populations, and all fingers are going to point to the United States for going after, again, the hornet's nest. So look, we shall see what happens. Again, leave your comments and opinions down below. I really do hope nothing happens that will escalate an entire regional war, but the United States definitely does have the right to defend themselves and to perform justice on whoever did these attacks. Now again, most fingers are pointing to the Islamic resistance in Iraq, and most fingers are pointing to the fact that Iran greenlit this attack and also provided the equipment for this attack. So we shall see what happens, and again, I hope we get some peace or some good news soon.